Welcome to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, where Major League and Minor League athletic trainers share insight into athletic training at the highest level. This week on Inside Athletic Training, we welcome in Jacob Newburn, the Assistant Athletic Trainer for the Texas Rangers. Enjoy the show. All right, Jacob, I'm excited to have you on the Inside Athletic Training podcast for our 32nd episode. Definitely look forward to talking all things athletic training with you today. You're currently an assistant athletic trainer with the Texas Rangers organization. Huge role with the club. We'll get into a lot of that soon. But first, I want to share with the listeners a bit about yourself and your background and how you got into this profession. So if you don't mind, share a bit of information, where are you from, were you into sports growing up, and also how you found your overall passion and interest in athletic training.
Yeah, not a problem. I grew up in North Dallas. Richardson is the exact city, but it's just north of Dallas. So I grew up a Rangers fan, kind of a nice little way it worked out. But I played sports growing up, pretty much everything, rec league, never really any club or select level anything, but I played soccer, basketball, and baseball. When I was probably 14, when I was 14, I was playing soccer with my summer team and tore my, but did not know it at the time. Tried to keep playing, and obviously that didn't work out. Started football that fall, and first full pads practice tried to hit somebody, and my knee did not want to handle that. So then they sent me over to the high school to see the athletic trainer there. When I met with an athletic trainer, it was the first time I had ever knew that profession existed. He was still called coach at that time. And he looked at my knee and said, "Hey, I think you got a sprained MCL here, but you should probably see a doctor." So I went to the doctor, got an MRI, and he came in after the MRI. And I had already been practicing football again, but, just non-contact, because, the things take a little longer when you're not in professional sports. and he came in and goes, "I expected to see you on crutches and not able to walk. You got a torn ACL, sprained MCL, torn disc. Most do surgery this week, but you're too young. You're 14 years old. Your growth plates are open. I don't want to cut in there right now. Let's put you in a brace and no contact sports or any cutting or turning for, until we can get surgery on this thing." So that ended my soccer, baseball, everything career. But I started swimming at that point, and I had always swam growing up, but I started swimming competitively, joined the high school team the next year, and never went back to the doctor. So I was existing with a torn ACL, but didn't need it until senior year. I was playing volleyball with some friends, wearing my knee brace, and someone came under the net and hit my other knee. Tore that ACL. Went and saw the athletic trainer, and he tried to compare bilaterally and realized that I'm bilaterally deficient now. But at that point, senior graduate college, I didn't want to, rehabbing through any of that. So I decided to push the, any seeing of doctors for my knees for that. And all that 20 years down the line, I'm still a bilaterally ACL deficient. But through that process, I've, was able to meet athletic trainers and get started in the profession, understanding what athletic trainers do. It piqued my interest, made me want to go into some sort of medical field, whether it be athletic training or PT or PA or, some form of orthopedics. When I chose the University of Tulsa for undergrad, I had gone up there for a visit, and they told me that after my first semester, I could, if I make the program, I'd be working with a team right away. And that sold me. I've never been one for sitting at a desk for long periods of time. Morning, I'd be in the athletic training room in the afternoon, or traveling with a team or working with a team on the field. I was sold. So it was a 7-semester program. So after one semester of observation, I did 7 semesters of working with a team and getting my hours and taking the actual courses that pertained to athletic training. And it was a fantastic program. When I left there and went to grad school at UNLV, I felt like I was ready I think we all feel that way, though. You feel like you're ready, and then, the world hits you in the face and tells you you don't know everything. But after my junior year at Tulsa, I was lucky enough to get connected with Kyle Turner, who was then the AA athletic trainer in Frisco. I called him up and asked if he would, let me come observe or intern. And he said, yeah, come in, let's have a talk, see what works out. For summer, I worked all the home games with him in Frisco. So since I lived there in the area, I just stayed at home and then drove up and went to work there. And that really got me interested in baseball. We didn't have baseball at University of Tulsa, so this was my first experience of working with baseball. And I was sold. I wanted it. I went to grad school at UNLV, got to do some baseball there. And when I finished my 2 years of classroom work, before the end of my semester, I called KT and I asked if they had anything open, if he was still with the Rangers, and he was the medical coordinator, and he said he'd passed my name out to some folks, but they were full up at the time. The end of April, he called me back and said, "You still interested?" And they had things shift around. So I resigned for the last month at UNLV for my grad assistantship after I finished my coursework, and drove down to Surprise, started working with the Rangers. And that was 2006. They sent me to Spokane a month later. I did short season, got back. They told me, thanks, you did a great job, but that was an internship. We don't have anything for you next year just yet. But, you have a passport? And I did have a passport. So they asked if I wanted to go to the DR for a couple of months just to work with the guys down there. So they put me up at the DR complex. I was down there for 2 months. When I came back, I had a contract for the next year. So it all worked out, and I've been with the Rangers ever since.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. And we hear from a lot of our guests that it was maybe an injury in high school or college during their career that kind of derailed their playing dreams, but got them introduced to the local athletic trainer and kind of sparked their interest. You mentioned a lot of your stops in minor leagues, Spokane, Iowa, Bakersfield, Hickory, just to name a few. Frisco, obviously, like you mentioned with Kyle Turner, who's now with the Royals. Following the 2018 season, when you were promoted to rehab coordinator, I'm interested to hear your thoughts about what your minor league career was like as you kind of approached that big league job. What are some of the memories and experiences that you were most fond of when you think of your early days in the minor leagues?
My first season, like I said, I'd shown up to Surprise a month later after a crash course with KT, Matt Lucero, Chris Lucia. They said, all right, well, here's your field kit. All your supplies should be ordered and up there. Here's the address you're going to. Here you go. See ya. And I drove to Spokane, and I got there, and I really wasn't prepared for the, being the travel secretary and handling all the non-athletic training stuff. And it was very overwhelming at first. And there were several phone calls where I was calling some of the, calling Deluche or calling KT or calling Lucky and just saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, how do I handle this? And they were really patient with me and pointed me in the right direction and let me, stumble a couple of times, but always there to catch me and like give me a push forward and a pat on the back and be like, you're going to be fine, kid. But they helped me learn a lot that first year. And then going to Clinton, Iowa, my first full season, we had probably one of the most talented teams I've ever worked with that year. And so there was a lot of scrutiny, and there was a lot of people coming through and wanted to check in and see how these guys were doing. And that was my first time really meeting with a lot of coordinators and talking to those guys. And then as I worked my way up, there were little things you learned along the way. I got to Frisco and worked with 40-man roster guys for the first time. And, dealing with talking to the major league staff anytime something happened there. Guys are a step away. We had 2 or 3 players called straight up from AA Frisco and talk to Lucky and Harms and let them know, hey, this is what this guy's dealing with, or hey, this guy's completely fine, hasn't been in here, he's good to go. Just making sure we're on the same page and having those conversations that, made me feel like, oh, wow, I'm like right there. So after the 2018 season, we knew there was going to be some shakeup in everything. And Jamie Reed and I talked, and he asked if I'd be interested in going to Arizona and doing rehab. And we had talked a few years prior, and I told him I was definitely interested in doing that. I had worked at TMI, which is Dr. Meister's PT clinic, with our now PT, Regan Long, for an off season. And Regan had taught me a few things, and just being in the clinic and working with some of those long-term rehabs had really kind of helped me hone my soft tissue skills and rehabilitation and exercise menu for rehabs. So I thought that was a great experience, and I was ready to take that to rehab as a new challenge. So after the 2018 season, my wife and I packed up, sold the house, and moved everything out to Arizona. We got a lease on a house, and we were ready to be there for the long haul. The day our furniture arrived, Jamie Reed called me and said he wanted to meet with me and Sean Fields, who has been the Arizona medical coordinator. And we met him on a field out at the complex, and he told us that Kevin Harms had retired and that there was going to be some upward movement for one of so we went through an interview process, and at the end of it, when Lucky called me, said, "Hey, did you sell your house yet?" And I told him we had just closed, and he was like, "All right, well, you got to look for a new one." So, I started the process of finding a place to move back to, but I stayed out in Arizona all the way through the off season, continued to work rehab, and prep things for spring training, and then moved back after spring training in 2019 to start working with the major league club.
Yeah, that's quite a road, and we all know that the mistakes you're able to make in the minor leagues, like you mentioned, are kind of shape you as an athletic trainer. And it's cool to see that, guys like Kyle Turner and other mentors of yours kind of picked you up when you were down and things of that nature, and kind of gave you that confidence to keep going. With regard to mentors, during those early days, you mentioned a couple guys who, like I said, showed you the ropes. Did you have any other role models specifically that you looked up to in the field of athletic training outside of Kyle Turner and those guys, or were there some people who kind of really shaped you in your early days as an athletic trainer?
Well, I think my advisors and supervisors at the University of Tulsa and UNLV were very helpful. Dave Polanski was the head athletic trainer at Tulsa while I was there. He taught me a lot, just watching the way he went about his work, how he communicated. He was always willing to put his hands on an athlete to try to get some hands-on treatment. And he was one of the first people who told me sometimes, putting an ice bag on a guy's not going to do what they want psychologically. If you put your hands on them, they're going to feel like you actually care. So I've kind of took that to heart. He's now the head football athletic trainer at University of Arkansas. Other role models, Dr. David Carr was my advisor at Tulsa. And he was one of the first guys to take the training wheels off and say, "All right, well, you're traveling this week by yourself as a senior athletic trainer with men's soccer. Call me if you need anything," and just kind of pushed me out there. And you go to UNLV, Mary was one of our athletic trainers at the university that kind of oversaw the graduate assistants, and she helped me kind of learn to deal with coaches. She taught me a few things about how to not get so frustrated with athletes. She was very laid back in how she handled her athletes, and it kind of gave me a role model for hey, don't get so fired up when they're late for treatment, relax a little bit. So I thought that was very beneficial. And then in baseball, some of the other athletic trainers I worked under or along with in the minor leagues, Brian Bobier, Jason Roberts, and Carlos Olivas are three that really, even Chris Garosik, he was only with the Rangers for a few years, but he's still a guy that I'll call every now and then and check in on and just talk to. And those were guys that were in AA and AAA when I was in the lower levels, and they were never afraid to answer a phone call from me. They were never, they always had the time to answer a call, offer advice, or just let me vent, or sometimes vent some of their stuff to me and, an idea of what I was dealing with. The different challenges you have at different levels. And they were always available if I had a question on, "Hey, how'd you handle this?" or "How should I handle that?" So I thought that was the relationships I built with those guys were very helpful for me along the way.
And now you've been in the league for a while. You've, seemingly had so many stops in the minor leagues and learned so much throughout that process. There's many of our listeners today are probably, in your shoes when you were at UNLV or looking to get a break and get into professional baseball athletic training. So is there any specific or one piece of great advice you might give to a college student who's looking to get into athletic training in baseball?
Well, I've actually had several reach out to me via, LinkedIn or emails. And I think the advice I give out most often is to get in the mix. You can't just stand around and watch. With the way things have shifted to a master's program where you get your undergrad degree, you go to a master's program, and you're in a classroom for more time than you're in a clinic. And so you need to get yourself into a clinic or into an athletic training room of some sort to get your hands, dirty, so to say, and learn what tissue feels like, learn what joints feel like, learn how to work the bedside manner of working with an athlete that's coming back from an injury or that just got injured. Those experiences you can't mimic in a classroom. And so I tell those kids to go observe, but when you're there, ask questions and try to get your hands on if they'll allow it. I think the time I spent, the off season I spent at TMI working, with Regan Wong, that crew taught me a lot. The different PTs had different approaches to different things. And so working with each of their different patients, helped me to understand the limitations of this patient, what can I do within those limitations? Oh, here's this patient's different. And this PT likes to use this technique, so I'm going to follow that. It's very helpful to understand and the communication you have in that. So I always push the students to, hey, go work at a PT clinic. Go offer up to be a tech at a PT clinic. And if you're only doing lasers and ultrasounds and putting hot packs and ice packs on, that's a start because you're talking to patients, but you're also watching what everyone else does. And eventually that parlays into maybe following them around and checking off boxes on what exercises they're doing. But guess what? You're learning how to do that exercise, how to demonstrate it, how to coach it. And eventually then task you with more and more things as you get more schooling, as you get more comfortable in the clinic.
No, that's great advice. And I think we've heard that from a couple of our guests that hands-on experience is kind of irreplaceable, although you need to be educated and know what's going on in the textbooks, in the classroom. Getting your feel for working with athletes is absolute priority. So that's cool to hear you say that as well. And speaking of that advice, one person who you mentioned you got a lot of advice from is Jamie Reed, who leads the Rangers staff. Jamie's seemingly an icon in Dallas with the Rangers. He's played such a huge role in building the Rangers sports medicine department for so many years. So I'm wondering what it's like for you to get to work with such a legendary athletic trainer like Jamie on a daily basis and how that impacts your career.
You go to an ASMI conference and Jamie would speak. And so I obviously knew he was the head athletic trainer at the Rangers, but when I was in Spokane and low A and high A, there was really not a need for me to contact him or talk with him. And in spring training, I would get 3 or 4 days over on the major league side. But as the head athletic trainer, he was in meetings, he was out on the field, he was running this way and that. So I'd get maybe 5 or 10 minutes to talk to him on the bench or in the training room during those times. And I think he understood that he didn't get as much time talking to the young guys as he wanted to. So as he transitioned to the medical director role, 2015, when he transitioned to that role, I was in high A. I talked to him a lot that year, 2016, 17, 18. He'd pop into Frisco every now and then. We'd talk, on players. We would have more conversations. And then obviously in the major leagues, he's a guy whose office is just down the hall from us. And if we need anything or have any questions or want to run something past him, he's always available. One of the most welcoming people and just good, genuine people you'll meet. And I've learned a lot from him, in athletic training and, as a person and dealing with how life in this profession can be. One of the things he taught me early on, I asked him hey, how do you handle the road and being gone all the time? Because I was doing it in the minor leagues. And I was like, how do you schedule look like I'm just swamped? And he said he always made time in the mornings to go get his workout in. He used to run the cities so he could see the cities. And that was one thing that kind of stuck with me. So, after I talked to him about that, whatever city I was in, I would try to get out in the morning. And even if it was just walk and get a coffee or, go work out in the gym just to wake myself up and get my, body going, just mark out my 30 minutes of my time, 30 minutes to an hour of like my time before I start emails and phone calls and all that, just to get settled. And I think that's very beneficial for anybody in any profession is, you can't let the job swallow you. You have to, you have to find more time. And he kind of pushed me in that direction early on. And I really thank him for that.
Yeah, that's great advice from Jamie. Obviously, a wealth of knowledge in the profession, and really knows how to keep a balance and make sure you have time for your family and yourself. So that's great to hear from you as well. Now to get a bit more into your day-to-day with the club, as many of our listeners want to and aspire to be an athletic trainer, they're probably wondering, well, what does an actual day look like for the Texas Rangers assistant athletic trainer? So walk us through a little bit of what you would call a quote unquote normal day when you guys are during the season.
All right. Well, today hopefully should be a normal day. So when I get there today, I'll head in I'll try to get there around 12:30, depending on how long we talk. But I'll get there, between 12 and 12:30. We are coming back from a road trip, so we'll unpack the trunks, the things that we use on a daily basis that we also take on the road. We'll make sure all that's out. About 1 o'clock, the players start rolling in. We might get a few guys that are doing some rehab come in around time to start one plan, like, here's what time we're going to be out there for ground balls. Here's what time we're going to be out there for this and this and this. We lay out we have our schedule up on the wall, and we lay it out with each player. Like, here's what your plan is for the day. Lucky is the guy that has to do all the meetings. So he'll run to the staff meeting and then come back and fill us in on any changes to the schedule or any changes to the plans. But we will be working with players from about 1 to 4, depending on what time we head out for stretch. And then I will head out and watch the ground balls, play catch, be on the field and be around for those guys. And then we get a little bit of downtime. Lately, we've been using that downtime in the training room to shoot a little hoops on our mini hoop, but mostly just a chance for the players to get something to eat, get their feet for a few, and that rush lasts for anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour of guys coming in, get stretched, get taped up, get warmed up somehow, whether it's with the modalities or to us taking them through some sort of active warm-up, going to the weight room with them and making sure they're hitting all the things we need them to hit to get warmed up. And then they head out on the field, and we get changed up for the game, and it's game coverage at that point. And then post game, we spend anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on what we're dealing with on recovery stuff with guys, whether it's soft tissue work or running them through the cryo or wrapping ice bags on them or getting them prepped with some take home modalities. Whatever the needs may be of the day.
And, when you were coming up through the ranks and dreaming of this big league job that you now have, I'm wondering, has it lived up to what you thought it was going to be like? Can you kind of explain a bit about what your expectations were when you were a young student hoping to make to the big leagues versus now you actually have the job, and kind of how things have lived up to your expectations there?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a bigger stage. We're double before coming up to the big leagues. You have big crowds there and some televised games, but it's after getting up to the major leagues, like getting text messages from people I know, like, hey, saw you on TV, and some of that. It's still kind of fun, but yeah. I try to stay off the TV because that means I'm staying off the field. So, and guys aren't getting hurt. That's the plus. But I do think it's a different level of stress. Things happen faster. You have more eyes, more people asking questions. It's a good stress. It keeps you on your toes. You have to know what's happening with all of your guys kind of all at once and be ready to answer a question on them if someone does come asking. So we keep, try to keep everything up to date in their EMRs, to date in our emails with the front office and conversations with the front office. And Lucky does a great job of communicating all of that with them and allowing us just to handle a lot of the day to day in the athletic training room, that means we have to keep him abreast of everything going on in the athletic training room. If a guy comes in and says he's a little sore today, or if a guy comes in and says he can't go, the first conversation is letting him know. And then if he's unavailable to go and talk to, the manager or the pitching coach or any of that, then that's on us to get down there and let them know. But normally everything runs through him, unless he's extremely busy or on a call or already meeting with one of those people and wants us to go let the other know. So it's just keeping everyone, on the same page, keeping communication open between everyone, so no surprises. I will add, in the minor leagues, you're by yourself. For the most part, my entire time in the minor leagues, I was the athletic trainer. I was the one athletic trainer on the staff. And sometimes I was also the travel secretary and helping players deal with their home life and all of that. You get to the major leagues and you can finally shed some of that. You're like, oh, we have a travel secretary. Oh, there's 3 athletic trainers and a PT here. I don't have to put it all on myself. And you can take some time to focus on doing what's right for the athlete every time, not trying to rush through or trying to do something for this guy while you're telling that guy to do something. And, there's other people around and other hands around to help you with everything.
And we've heard the same from a couple of your colleagues who have been on the show, talking about how different it is in the minor leagues. There's so much on your plate. When you get to the big leagues, you really get to focus on your craft. So it seems like that's a common theme for most of our guests so far. One of the things you mentioned, about minor league baseball is the travel, but also in the big leagues, you're on the road a ton, if not more than anyone. So I'm interested to hear a bit from you about what you guys do to help your players stay healthy, get proper nutrition and sleep on the road. What are some things that you guys as a staff prioritize with so much travel for the players?
Well, something that started this year with Bochy coming in, it seems like we're backing up our buses. So we're not getting to the park as early, which is kind of pushing the guys to sleep in, get some rest, don't get to the park so early. You put a first bus time on there, and a lot of these guys that are younger are going to force themselves to first bus and ask them why they're, and they're like, well, that's what time the bus was. So we push the bus back. Those guys get a little more rest. They don't feel as rushed, and that helps them recover a little bit. We have the luxury of having, a massage therapist that travels with us. We have our PT that can do, dry needling. We all do some form of recovery, massage, stretching. All of that's available to the guys. And we definitely push guys if we see that they've been on their feet a lot. They've done a lot of running in the last few games. They've, had a lot of work over the last week, maybe working on, extra ground balls or extra hitting. We push them towards recovery modalities. Now on our flights, we have several options for guys. In the athletic training room, we use BFR recovery. We use Normatec. At home, we utilize the cryo and red light therapy, plus our hot and cold plunge. We have a full menu of recovery options for the guys. And I think the biggest thing we do is talk to our guys and check in with them. Tell them it's okay to feel a little run down. What are you doing to combat it? It's okay to be a little tired. It's August. It's September now. It's okay to feel a little tired. What are we doing to combat it? Is it time to step back and take less swings? Is it time to get off our feet? We had a rough travel schedule this time around where our last road trip, we went Arizona, Minneapolis, New York, which is a 3-city, 3-time zone trip. We had an off day in Minneapolis, but, are our guys recovering? Are they getting enough sleep? Are they battling, a cold or allergies from the change of time zones and hotel air conditioners? Offering up all the medications we have. I carry a over-the-counter medication kit with me, on the flight. So if a guy starts getting some allergy stuff or, doesn't feel well, we have some basic stuff to handle that. We get to the hotel, they have something there to handle. There's always water and snacks at the hotel when we arrive. We push hydration. We carry, several different hydration options that are, salt placements or, some carbohydrates and salt mix that help with guys staying hydrated and not feeling as run down after a hard workout. We push fluids during the game. We try to do everything we can within our abilities to get these guys ready for that day and the next.
And to add on to that, how do you take care of yourself as a very important piece of the organization when you're on the road? I know you're a huge coffee drinker, so I'm sure that's part of your routine as well. But talk to the listeners a bit about how you stay fresh and stay on top of your game when you're on the road, bouncing from city to city throughout the season.
Well, and I think the biggest side of that is to stay on the routine that you set out for yourself. And for me, it's waking up in the morning, doing something active. It doesn't always mean working out in the gym. Sometimes that's going for a walk to get a cup of coffee, picking a spot that's a little later or a little further away so that you're getting exercise just walking to get your coffee and walking back, getting some sunlight in the process. Sometimes it's renting bikes and going on a little bike ride with the crew. Last year, our medical staff rented bikes in San Fran, and we biked over the Golden Gate Bridge. We planned to take the ferry back, but the ferry wasn't running on schedule. So some of us ended up waiting for the ferry, and the others tried to ride back, and I think broke a pedal and ended up taking a cab. We biked around New York last year as well. This year, our method of exercise as a group has been pickleball. So we found pickleball courts, and we've just tried to stay active and be outside when it could, or found an indoor place when it was really hot, and played some pickleball as a group. And, that's some team building, it's some competition, it's some exercise. And we just, focus on, one, not getting hurt while we're playing, and two, just being active and being away from the hotel and away from the field to kind of get a mental reset out of it. So I think those are beneficial. Like I said, what Jamie told me years ago is that, take care of yourself first. And if that means going for a run or going for a bike ride or going and playing pickleball or just walking and going to get a coffee and seeing some of the new city, all of that is a great reset. When you get back to your room and you get cleaned up and you get ready for your day, that's when you start turning your mind on, like, all right, what's the plan for this guy? What are we doing here?
Yeah, and you're clearly super passionate about the profession of athletic training and the role you play in Texas. But what do you value most and appreciate the most about your role? A few of our previous guests have mentioned that getting someone back on the field healthy is really one of the most amazing feelings within athletic training. But what do you value most? What's the most important and favorite thing to you about your job?
I mean, I've always been a problem solver. I give me any sort of puzzle or problem, and I will try to, hammer out every possible solution to it and fix it. So I enjoy what athletic training does for me is provide me a new challenge on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Whether it be in baseball, whether it be working with an athlete, a guy comes with neck spasm or a tight neck, and he's like, hey man, like it just locked up on me this morning, or it just locked up on me, while I was hitting in the cage. What can I do? And you pull out every tool in the toolbox and try everything you can to get it, to feel better. And when he gets up off the table and he's like, wow, thank you, that feels so much better. Yeah, that's very rewarding. But there's also, the first baseman who comes in after an inning. He's like, dude, I think I just popped the lace in my glove, and hands it to you on the bench. And you're like, all right, it's go time. He got about, three hitters at a minimum, maybe an extra one or two. And with the new pitch clock, it's like, all right, let's see if I can relace the glove in 3 minutes or less. So those kind of challenges I love. I think I had to relace a shoe on the mound this year in Oakland when a shoelace popped on our starting pitcher. So those are the challenges I love, is just something new, something different, and having to work on the fly. You can ask any of our staff, and they'll probably tell you, like, I'm the guy. If there's something they're like, hey, we can't get the cold tub isn't getting cold, or the hot tub's not getting hot, or the motor on this thing stopped working, I'm the guy they hand it to, because I will take it apart and figure out what's going on and try to, hammer out some solution to get it working again.
Yeah, there's something definitely to be said about being the resourceful guy on the staff, and it's always great to be the one that's ready to jump in whenever needed. So, great skill to have for sure. Well, Jacob, we really appreciate you joining the show. Awesome to hear about your career and your time with the Rangers thus far. Definitely great things for you to come. To wrap up today's episode, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment that we call Extra Bases. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions and let you share some insight into your favorite things about athletic training and baseball. So we'll kick it off at first base. Outside of your home athletic training room in Texas, what is your favorite athletic training room to work in the big leagues?
Well, I think I'm going to have to agree with Lucky and say Tampa. The Trop's not a wonderful place to go all the time, but that athletic training room, it's a good amount of space. There's a good amount of countertop space for us to put all the stuff we need when we travel. We have a bathroom and shower connected, and our lockers are in the little office there next to it. So we have our own little kind of workspace / clubhouse. So the Trop, they did it right when they set up that athletic training room for the visitors.
And moving on to second base, you guys have probably the best seat in the house every night on a game night. So I got to ask, what's your favorite big league stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
Every city we go to, we always, we'll stand out there on the field and we'll look around, and it's almost like somebody different will be like, oh, this is definitely in my top 5. And I think that's how we look at it now. I don't think anyone can pick just one that they're like, this is my favorite. But I don't know, something about Anaheim, like the rocks in center field, the open air feel to it. I've always liked going there. It's nice and spread out. There's good seats all the way around it. You can always find room on the rail. And that center field view, I just think it's a really cool, what they did for that ballpark, and it's kind of lasted into the test of time for right now. So
Yeah, and you can't beat the weather out there, and in Southern California, it's always beautiful. So definitely makes things better at the stadium. Moving on to third base, you guys get to go all across the country, take your walks and exercise early in the morning in a number of different cities. So what's your favorite city to visit on the road?
It's a tough one. We just came back from New York. The hustle and bustle there I can handle for a couple of days, but I do enjoy being able to go and find, good, different Chinese or good Korean or good Italian. There's always a different coffee shop you could check out. It's something different every time. It's never go back to the well. You could always go back to the same spot, but year to year, that same spot may be something different. So I always like the newness and the differentness of going to New York and just seeing different things.
And to wrap it up, home plate, the last question of the day, always interested to hear people's answers for this one. When you first got to the big leagues with the Rangers, was there at some point during your first year that you had a welcome to Major League Baseball moment?
Mine actually came before I was on the Major League staff. I was a September call-up. I was working in Frisco, and they asked if I'd come up and help them out when when rosters expanded to 40 back in, before we limited it to 28. And Kevin Harms was on the bench. I was down there, and he had head up to handle something, and he handed me the towel he was, always carried with him. He handed it over to me. He goes, "All right, you got it, kid." And he walked off, and I looked around, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I have field coverage now. I'm the Major League athletic trainer at the moment." So it was definitely like a shell shock moment of like, oh wow, I am the guy at this point if something happens. And that was probably my welcome to the big leagues moment, the best I could figure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like you said, it's important to get your hands dirty. You said that at the beginning of the show. You got to jump in there, take advantage of your opportunities. And clearly you've done that throughout your career. And like we said before, a ton of awesome stuff definitely coming down the road for the rest of your career. Well, Jacob, thanks again for joining the show. Really appreciate your time and wish you and the guys down in Texas nothing but the best of luck throughout the rest of the season.
All right. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate it.
And that wraps up this episode. Thank you for listening to Inside Athletic Training, a podcast from the Professional Baseball Athletic Trainers Society, a show for athletic training students, educators, and professionals who want to learn more about life as an athletic trainer in major and minor league baseball. If you've enjoyed the show, head over to pbats.com to gain access to other free resources. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thanks again for listening.